the question came up, how do you identify what market, how you define where your market is? And I thought the way Les framed it was great. I want to connect it to a somewhat larger construct, which is something I've been working on a lot, which is, as I said, when I started in strategy, it was all about industry, because strategy came out of industrial economics, which was an industry-based thing. What we're seeing today is a real blurring of industry lines. And I think that is creating systematic blind spots among an entire generation of people. So here's why. Any industry, as we define it, is born at a particular place and time. And there are things that are possible at that place and time and things that are not. And those things that are possible now drive the constraints that you're operating under, which get embedded in how you do things, what drives performance. Once you've discovered that model for fun, right? Now you've got metrics in place. So let's take traditional retail. Traditional retail was completely dominated by one universal fact. How you did was a function of how well you used your real estate. That was the overriding dominant thing. So all the key metrics in traditional retail are things like sales per square foot, inventory turns, right? Foot traffic, space that you allocated to various things. Every single metric in your life, it comes from that. Enter the internet, and all of a sudden, that blows up. Now the problem is, if you're a dyed-in-the-wool, been doing this for 40 years retailer, you look at the internet and it looks, it doesn't look like something that should bug you too much. Right? Or you look at the internet and you totally freak out and it's like, oh my God, we have to go digital, blah, blah, blah. And you probably remember in the late 90s, the money that was put into everybody had to have a website and banner ads. And this is the problem with these hype cycles. When an inflection point first appears, the tendency is to overreact. And it's too early. You're in that high signal to noise ratio. Now, I'm not saying ignore it. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying don't sort of say, this is the future, we need to be first. Remember pets.com? Webvan, right? $1.5 billion to learn we didn't hate grocery shopping as much as we said we did, and on and on. And what you have is this sort of blind rush into the future. You want to talk about Uber and those guys, right? Same exact phenomena. Just because we can have apps that now mediate our activities doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It does. Doesn't mean that the rest of the package comes together. My personal prediction about Uber is it will come to a pretty bad end without a significant redirection of their business model. And I don't know that the markets are going to give them the patience for that, because it's going to require even more investment. And they're already losing billions, a quarter, which is not the expectation that one has for a public company. And if you're interested in that, I'm happy to hang around and gossip about Uber later. But I have said, by the way, I have been saying in print publicly that Uber is a dumb idea since 2015. And if you're interested in those, I would be happy to share them with you. But anyway, back to our retailers. Now, what I'm arguing we need to think about instead is, what is our competitive arena? And what do the people that have the resources in that arena need to get done? And the core idea is here something that Clay Christensen invented. He called it the jobs to be done theory. And basically he said, stop thinking about people buying your product or service. Start thinking about them hiring it to get jobs they need to get done in their own lives. Hiring products and services to get jobs done. And what that often will do is reframe the way that you're structuring your conversation about markets, and it can kind of change the dynamic. So let's take a specific example, drawing on retail. Your friendly local teenager. Think of a teenager. You have one in mind, right? Others of you have teenagers. You either have one or were one, right? All right, think about clothing. What's the job clothing does for teenagers? Send signals. Status, signals. What tribe am I? What tribe am I not? Right? Now, is that definition of what clothing's supposed to do for you my mother's definition? I'll tell you my mother's definition. Good clothing comes from Jcpenney's. It survives multiple trips through the washing machine. It doesn't stain or wrinkle easily. It can last for several seasons, and this is good quality clothing, because that's the world she grew up in. Clothing was scarce. Clothing was scarce. You have a different job to be done when things are scarce than you do when they're abundant. Teenagers, what are they doing? So what we've identified is the job is really communication. It's telling other people something about us that we want them to know. Now, What else are teenagers doing? They're, hermetically attached to these devices, right? And what they're doing is communicating on their devices. What are they sending to other people in their tribe, whatever? Pictures, right? If it didn't happen, if it wasn't on Instagram, did it actually happen? It's kind of the new philosopher's question about trees falling in the forest, right? So here's the problem. You send a picture around and you're wearing, a pink jacket. And the following week, you're at a party and you're in that pink jacket. And then the week after that, you're on a field trip or something from school and you're in that pink jacket. Like, is that the only article of clothing you own? So what we have is a totally different job to be done, right? I want clothing that sort of is like the old Mission Impossible tapes. I want to put it on, take the perfect selfie, and then it should just self-destruct and I'm on to the next thing. I want disposable clothing, basically. And the fancy name people have given to this is fast fashion, right? So who's winning in fast fashion? Rent the Runway, yep. So we don't even own clothing anymore, right? And there's a bunch of add-ons to that, Stitch Fix and a bunch of those others. So that's one expression of this demand. But on the retail side, right, Zara, Forever 21,
New York and Company,
all those guys, Ross Stores, TJ Maxx. If you were to look at the sales numbers for any of those companies, you will see what happens when you get on the right side of an inflection point. It's straight north, right? Who's kind of missed it? Jcpenney, Macy's, right? Their idea of the clothing business is we have 4 seasons. The all-important one being the back-to-school season. And so what we do is we design all our clothing, we send the designs to Asia, they manufacture the clothes, the whole season's worth comes in at the beginning of the season. We sell what we can, what we can't we deeply discount, and then we're ready for the next season. That's their model. They've swum in that ocean so long, they cannot even see the world around them. And that's just a very straightforward example. So I think an elaboration I would make to Les's kind of very clear definition of selecting markets is think also about what is the job you are uniquely getting done that nobody else can do for you.